for 20 plus years say I'm insane and there's no human-animal chimeras. I've had people try to physically start fistfights with me repeatedly on the street. One time at a pizza place, when I was covering spider goats 20 plus years ago, it was in medical scientific literature. I called the head of the Army base in upstate New York, where they had a private contractor creating part human, part animal goats so they could create body armor, a spider web in the milk of the goats. So we broke that in the news. And so then they finally, a few years later, had articles about spider goats. And that's really what's important is we're forcing, years later, the media to finally cover real things. But see, that's why they want to keep saying it doesn't exist, so that you'd never worry about breakaway civilization. You never worry about these advanced technologies. I mean, they think a car that has a 200-mile-per-gallon carburetor is disruptive technology. The Japanese have had it for decades, so you can't have it. No, that's empowering humanity, cutting waste, helping folks have better lives. But something like human-animal chimeras that give rise to zoological viruses, bacteria, allow diseases to jump cross-species, all of this is going on like a giant subterranean Manhattan Project, and they're only showing us the tip of the iceberg, and I'm begging people to have a debate about this, to be adults about this, about breakaway civilization, space programs, medical advances, fission, fusion, cyclotrons, fission, fusion, heavy super colliders, superconducting super colliders, all these thousands of things. And they just go, that doesn't exist, like it's Santa Claus. That doesn't exist, kids. Don't look at it, because they don't want to have a debate about it. The real investigative journalism isn't like the Animal Liberation Front breaking in and burning down some research facility, but it's whistleblowers from inside these facilities. Information coming out. Imagine the Pulitzer Prize. You probably actually get killed for going in and showing film footage of these. Talk to people that are scared over the years. And I'm going to leave it at that. And they just said, Alex, it's unbelievable. It was unbelievable in the 1980s, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, they were growing human ears on mice in the 1980s. They were telling us about it then. They had roaches with the tiny microchips that were remote control in the 80s as well. But now you see, now we can be told about all this by the Young Turks and the enlightened ones and MSNBC. When I've been telling you from the beginning, not because I'm some hero, but I want animal rights. I want human rights. But notice you don't hear from the animal rights people anything about this, because let me tell you why. Aldous Huxley's brother, Julian Huxley, was the head of the World Eugenics Society. And at the end of World War II, they openly said, we've got to change the name of our journals from the Eugenics Journal, from the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute and others, the Cold Springs Harbor, to these other names because, you know, they're connected to Nazism. We want to take control of human development. We'll call ourselves transhumanists to control human development as gatekeepers and to hide eugenics within that. And so this has all been going on under the surface and is being kept from the public. And so notice Huxley then helped set up the modern PETA organizations. See, they're all about animal rights, but not about human rights, or not even discussing chimera, because in that zoological discussion, transzoological, it opens up the entire can of worms. So that's my message to the media. Quit making jokes about this. Be serious and understand that this is affecting everybody. Just a few zoological things that got loose. That's ancient, 60, 70-year-old technology. The scheme of time, that's ancient today. Time so compressed. Is things like Lyme's disease. And again, here's the news today saying you really have to watch the entire 5-minute segment, though somehow it even gets crazier, when I talk about chimeras. Lou Dobbs and myself and Drudge Report and Dr. Corsi really exposed that we went into the North American Union and that is being merged via the Atlantic Agreement with the European Union and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, all of which Trump has been dynamiting and pulling us out of. It's beautiful. NAFTA, GATT is being renegotiated, pulled us out of the Paris climate carbon tax accords. It's supposed to be a $100 trillion tax every decade. That's from Davos. All the good things Trump's doing. The travel ban. It's totally constitutional. It's in the law. A 5-year-old could understand it. But the Ninth and Fourth Circuits are judicial activists, and they went along with the media to portray the president as in left field. Everything they do is to portray the president as incompetent and a moron and to undermine the country because they represent foreign multinational corporate interests that are crony, that are not free market, that want a consolidation. They do not want prosperity. They want austerity. Now, joining us is Larry Klayman, who obviously has won cases, the only cases, against the National Security Agency and illegal spying. He was the founder of Judicial Watch, freedomwatchusa.org. And he's working a big case of a CIA whistleblower that's documented a lot of the illegal spying that's going on. But the first reason I wanted to get Larry Klayman on as a constitutional lawyer is looking at what Comey's done. That was a few weeks ago. We've kind of forgotten about it, but that's still big news. That's coming up. Loretta Lynch, the signals that she may be indicted. Cut and dry, meeting illegally with Bill Clinton. Cut and dry, lying. Comey having to admit that she told him to not have a criminal investigation, but a matter. Everything they claim Trump's done, they've done. And then Comey testifying that Trump never tried to get him to obstruct, but the media ignores that. So he always has a lot of contacts in the FBI and inside baseball. So first and foremost, with Larry Klayman of freedomwatchusa.org, I want to get his expert breakdown on exactly what's happening with these internal battles going on. And is Attorney General Sessions, as we've heard, getting ready to execute his duty or take the gloves off in response to the fact that we know the Russia narrative is a hoax. They know it's a hoax. Larry Klayman, what's the intel you've got?
Alex, happy holiday.
Thank you.
Well, the intel I've got is my own experience. And what we know with regard to Comey, and we've talked about Dennis Montgomery on a prior appearance, and you've talked about him generally as well. He's an NSA, CIA whistleblower. He came forward with 47 hard drives, over 600 million pages of information, much of it classified, showing that President Trump and the people around him, his family, were being surveilled.
And so was I, and so was Michael Savage.
That's right. And yours truly, I'm sure you were too, Alex. I mean, everybody. On there.
Millions. There's millions of people in there.
Anybody who is a antagonist towards them, that they see is adverse to them, they're going to surveil. And we still have this Obama deep state. It's still in effect. So I brought. By the way,
I know those phone numbers are good because it's the Mar-a-Lago number nobody had. It was his private number there at Trump Tower. I mean, this was Trump's phone numbers.
Well, and it's not just Trump, it's everybody who's anybody, and plus hundreds of millions of Americans. So I got Montgomery immunity. I brought him forth to Comey at the FBI directly through a federal judge, Royce Lamberth, and he turned all this stuff over. And Comey, because we now know there's certain revelations by Circa News, that Comey was actually doing the illegal surveillance at the FBI against all these people. So he buried this investigation.
And so he perjured himself before Congress when he said no surveillance was going on of Trump ever, period.
That's correct. And he was also the FBI director during this period. Now, before Comey, there was Mueller. He was doing illegal surveillance, too. So this case is really important because not only are we going forward on the fact that I've been surveilled and Montgomery's been surveilled, I have to change my cell phone 3 times in the last 6 to 8 months. They've inserted malware into it. Montgomery confirmed that. And Verizon, when I went there, they said, we've never seen anything like this before. So I sued, Montgomery sued. They're trying to break into his computers. They got into his cell phones. And on top of that, they're sitting on all of this information, which is an obstruction. And therefore, we brought a lawsuit. You can see that at freedomwatchusa.org. Now, the deep state has tried to discredit Montgomery by having national security reporters like James Risen write that he's a fraud. He's not a fraud. And we just found out that Eric Lichtwell, who is Risen's partner at the New York Times, was just fired from CNN for fake news, for lying to the American people.
Wait a minute, Larry Klayman, are you saying mainstream media lies? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, right. We have a leftist media strike force, Alex. I mean, you know that. You got the full treatment a week ago with Megyn Kelly. So this is a reality here that we have to deal with. And this case can actually take out Comey. It can take out Mueller because they have committed crimes against the American people themselves. They've conducted illegal surveillance. It's criminal. It's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. And Montgomery is a key witness, and now he's a plaintiff. So we were in court last week, and Judge Richard Leon, a few days later, ordered this thing proceed. He was deciding whether to keep it. It's a related case. It's on an expedited schedule. It's a preliminary injunction. We're going to be seeking discovery of Comey, of Mueller, of others in this case.
By the way, let me stop you, Larry. I have a real problem. I don't tend to hype up big guests, and I just tend to just have you on, and we just kind of bring it on and don't point out how huge this is. Right. You're the only guy that's won in court against the NSA. You have this amazing whistleblower, as big or bigger than Snowden. I've seen just the limited data I got from the Arpaio people, which I know you're separate from. You weren't involved in that. And, I mean, it's the deliberate targeting of conservatives and libertarians in the media. It's specific, it's total, it's private phone numbers I had in offices that I never even used. It is a database of files they can go into and then listen to an entire larger file of everything you do on a fax machine, an email, a phone number, your family's phone numbers. I call family I call other numbers when I'm under particular surveillance. Suddenly their phones get taken over, start calling people in other address books. Start creating this nexus. I mean, your power goes down 5-6 times faster when they're live time in your phone. So I know what this is like. It's amazing. For the week before the Megyn Kelly, they were in all our phones. It was just incredible. And to live here and to know this is going on, it's just insane. To go watch the movie Snowden and to have personally lived it, you know, I guess that makes us all comrades, you know, fellow travelers, to use the communist term. This is crazy.
Well, it is, and we live in an Orwellian state, and that's exactly what Leon said when we got our victories a few years ago. We enjoined these intelligence agencies. We enjoined Obama. Later, the appellate court mooted out the preliminary injunctions because there was a new law that was put into effect, the USA Freedom Act, but now we find out they're violating that too. So when I went back to Judge Leon, I said, Your Honor, they're violating what you ruled earlier, law of the case, that these are unconstitutional Fourth Amendment violations. They're criminal in nature. We need to proceed on this case. He agreed with me. We're going to proceed quickly. This is the one case, Alex, that can take out Comey.
Oh, I totally agree. I hadn't put two and two together. I mean, you went before Comey. You went before the courts. You won. Comey then, now he's been identified as the guy running a bunch of these spy programs between the FBI and other agencies, obviously, has been caught lying to Congress saying it's, quote, crazy that Trump thinks he was ever surveilled.
Well, that's right. And clearly he was, and so was everybody else. Now, we don't know whether he was surveilled after he became president by virtue of Montgomery, because Montgomery was up to a certain point. But the fact is that there was a pattern and practice of doing this. This occurred on Comey's watch, and before that it occurred on Mueller's watch. So how can these people be part of an independent counsel or special counsel investigation when they're dirty, when they have committed criminal acts? So that's the importance of this case. Notwithstanding the fact that I've been surveilled, that's a violation. We've sued for large damages. And we also asked to get Montgomery's hard drives back, which Comey and the FBI misappropriated.
Let's go back to that, but let's be clear. If a random person gets caught in your backyard looking through your keyhole or looking through your blinds, we're talking 5 years in prison. And they should. But if you use that to then use the information against somebody, it's a more serious felony of conspiracy, blackmail, you name it. And that's what they're doing. These are serious felonies. If I got caught putting a camera in my neighbor's house, I'd go to jail for 10 years. But in the government does it illegally, it's supposedly okay.
Well, this is a higher force than the president himself. Okay, this is a third form of government, in effect. Actually, a fourth form. You've got the three branches of government. Then you've got these intelligence agencies who have broken away from any branch, and they can be used by presidents. I mean, ask yourself this question. We know that Chief Justice John Roberts was illegally surveilled by these intelligence agencies and potentially the FBI. Why did he flip at the last minute on Obamacare? Why do we have the problem that we currently have? Do these agencies, have they dug up
Listen,
dirt?
I've talked to folks that have talked to Supreme Court justices who said that there was blackmail via the NSA used against members, not just one member, but members of the Supreme Court, and Scalia was getting ready to shoot his mouth off.
Well, that may explain why he's no longer on this earth. I mean, who knows, Alex? But the reality here is that this is extremely dangerous. You know, King George III, if he had these capabilities, as I've said before, our founding fathers' plans would have been exposed. They never would have gotten Philadelphia to sign the Declaration of Independence. They would have been arrested and executed before they got there. That's how serious this is. This sits over the heads of every American. Anybody who criticizes the government or wants to take on a particular cause that isn't liked by the establishment in Washington is subject to this surveillance and blackmail without probable cause, without any showing that we're committing a crime or that we're in contact with terrorists. This is perhaps the worst scandal. I mean, it's not even a scandal. It's beyond scandal.
Well, as you know, it continues to turn out that Wahhabists and others are being given key national security level master control over Capitol computers, over agency computers. They're bringing foreigners in and infesting everything with no real clearances. It's a total takeover.
Well, it is. And this is the danger of this. This is why we need the support of the American people. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate. And Mr. Montgomery's trying to make ends meet out there. He's got a brain aneurysm. He's very hurt.
Well, I'll tell you this, Larry. I mean, you're the guy that beat the NSA and got a law passed. Now they're violating that. I mean, you get results. I hope folks will support you. I want to come back then and ask, how far does this rabbit hole go? And from your contacts, what's about to happen next? Millie Weaver and crew, the Red Pill Expo that Lord Monckton, Robert Kiyosaki, and others were at over the weekend, and some of the interviews have not been seen yet. They've got one with Robert Kiyosaki, who's very respected and good friends with Donald Trump. It's a warning to the president about some of the black ops he was involved in. And I can confirm some of these black ops from some other sources. It's pretty amazing stuff. In fact, I may even air that in the fourth hour for it's about 5 minutes long, a clip when Mike Cernovich is hosting. But there's just overwhelming amounts of news. You're not even getting live here on the air. Go to Infowars.com as a lot of that news breaks. And please spread those videos. Larry Klayman, again, demonized by the media, demonized by the establishment right wing because he's effective. He's the guy that helped get the impeachment going. He's the guy that got the NSA to have to stop its behavior and got a national law passed, which they've been caught breaking again. But because of that, now we have investigations. We're exposing it. Remember just 10 years ago, I was insane. None of this existed. And then it was exactly as we told you it was because it's all hidden in the Telecommunications Acts from 1962 and 1987 and 1996 as they put the infrastructure in. It's all hiding in plain view. Then we have the whistleblowers. And Larry Klayman has a whistleblower that I've talked to law enforcement. They've been on. They've seen it. And I've seen very small pieces of it. As a journalist, we're allowed to see this, but under precedent, but it's still dangerous. And all I'm saying is I don't think people realize the danger that Larry Klayman's gone through, or we gone through. I mean, we had all the guests on the week of Benghazi saying exactly what happened from NATO, from the Army, from the CIA. I mean, they had the Justice Department come to their houses. They got threatened with murder. Now, that's behind the scenes. I'm not going to tell you some of the stuff behind the scenes went on here because it's off record. But let me tell you, some of our guests are heroes. This isn't a game, people. I've gone through a lot just doing it. I'm not complaining. I just want you to know this proves how real all this is, that they do this. But we don't have to prove anything. It's all been admitted now, thanks to all the whistleblowers from AT&T and Larry Klayman and all the rest of it. So now where does all this go, Larry Klayman?
Well, it goes, Alex. We're trying to wage a peaceful revolution, as you know. We're trying to use the courts. We're trying to use other means. We're trying to use people like yourself who get the word out. I have a radio show myself. It's called Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman on Radio America. You can find it on our website. Education's important, and it's not just the lawsuits, because this country's on its knees, and we need to rise up and bring it back. And, yeah, it requires strong measures. We're not in favor of violence, but, of course, the left is, and they're trying to do that. And when you talk about violence, just yesterday, we found out that an FBI agent was indicted in Oregon for lying about killing one of the protesters when the Bundys went up there to protest this land grab.
You know, let's stay a little longer because I want to get into that, but it'll take some time. I remember when this all happened, I talked to some folks in the Army who were very upset because they were there, and I was told all of this, and I just couldn't even believe it, that they would just randomly kill this guy for no reason and lie about it. But now it's all been confirmed. And Lord Monckton first gave us that news last week. You're saying you have more intel on that. It's now subsequently happened.
Well, yeah, I've been trying to represent Klayman Bundy, okay, in the case in Nevada. I got a judge there, Gloria Navarro, who's trying to keep me out of that case. I'm at the Supreme Court on that issue very shortly because she doesn't want a Larry Klayman in there because I'll challenge her. But she's the hand-picked judge of former Senator Reid, Harry Reid, that very corrupt Las Vegas senator. And then Klayman, who's being tried probably in about a month and a half with his sons, he never harmed a hair on anybody's head, yet he was indicted. And he was indicted, Alex, I believe, because he used a politically incorrect phrase after that successful standoff where the government had to leave, where they were using excessive force. Klayman compared himself to the Negro in the Old South. Of course, Martin Luther King had used that word, and he just didn't know the right word. So Obama took offense. Loretta Lynch took offense, and she indicted Klayman and his sons.
And they said, these are domestic terrorists. No, they had hundreds of their cows letting them die in a barn on land the family had grazing rights to since 1877. But then they lied to the public going, oh, they just stole public land. No, the public didn't understand common law or even federal law.
That's right. Now, fast forward, we've got Klayman Bundy, and you can see about that at KlaymanBundyDefenseFund.org. He needs your support. Klayman Bundy.
Stay there then. Let's come back and flesh this out, because I don't even know if this is known, but it wasn't just Joe Biggs that got warned off. I then talked to folks that were actually there, and I couldn't really talk about it at the time because it was an off the record, but now some of it's leaking in the case. They had U.S. Army Special Operations there.
We're on the mark.
War was lost. My life behind. With the globalists, we've been sold out to a private planetary government. But Trump got into office, and we have a beachhead trying to pull us out of these unelected global agreements that literally transfer power out of the country. Meanwhile, in many Western states, upwards of 50 to 60% on average of the land is federal. Some states, it's 89%, like Nevada and other areas. And the feds are super aggressive now. I've gone to national parks, and the regular rangers are okay, but you get around the police, I mean, everybody knows I'm not anti-police, but when you see somebody crazed, aggressive, rude, I walk over, try to talk to people repeatedly at Big Ben, and they're rude and bow up to everybody. I mean, when you've been in third world countries and you've seen authoritarian police, how they strut around, how they behave, they look like North Korean police. They have that same crazed look. You know your country's in trouble. But remember the TSA hiring ads a few years ago that said, we want imperious people. They want you to act imperial. Imperious means super arrogant. Larry Klayman, again, top constitutional lawyer, absolutely fighting the globalist at point-blank range, joins us. The left's been calling for major violence. This just broke. I told you this was coming. July 2nd is when Soros doubled the amount of money he's ever spent in the U.S. for civil unrest. Washington Times, Michael Moore urges followers to rise up over 4th of July, storming senators' offices. And, of course, they've been calling for violence. The Huffington Post and others have said, too bad there's not more congressmen being shot. Meanwhile, they're saying we're going to cause violence against them. They're going to kick off the violence. They're going to say we're behind it. That is clear. Because they know Trump's trying to get control of the agencies right now. They want to have a violent overthrow before that hits. I think they're insane, just like in the campaign. I believe this is their Waterloo. I believe they miscalculated. We'll talk about all this with Larry Klayman in a moment. First off, Mike OZX on our deathbed. Now we're trying to get up. That's why they're panicked. Michael Moore, the globalist, no, stay there like Lilliputians. And then go through what's happening with the Bundys and with the FBI agent being indicted for what he did. That shows Trump, the Justice Department, and others are moving forward. Obviously, there's local issues as well. And then what we can all do in this critical time, and what your message is to President Trump, Larry Klayman.
Well, my message is stand tough, like you, Alex, like me. Don't worry about people say. Don't worry if they come after you. It actually emboldens me, because we are against this very corrupt, evil establishment. The Democrats are one thing, but the Republicans are trying to stab Trump in the back as well. They want to run their establishment candidate. So we just have to be who we are. We have to push ahead. Now, going back to Bundy, Mr. Lincecum, who was a peaceful protester in Oregon, because the Bundy sons went out there to help another rancher, wound up getting shot dead. And now we find out an FBI agent lied about that. And that doesn't come as any surprise. And who was the FBI director at the time? James Comey. There you go. So all of this kind of comes together. Now, we have Attorney General Jeff Sessions. I believe he's a good man, Alex. I think you do too. But he's being beaten up right and left, okay? 2 meetings with the Russian ambassador he did while he was a senator. He's accused of perjury, everything else. Now there's a complaint filed by 34 Democrats and some Republicans with the Inspector General to investigate matters involving the firing of James Comey. Not a coincidence. The poor guy is under siege every single day. And I've been trying to get him to review the Bundy prosecution because I didn't tell him how he should come out with it. But the prosecution in Nevada is falling apart. The two sons were acquitted. They virtually represented themselves in Oregon on the peaceful protest, although Mr. Lincecum was killed. Bundy's haven't harmed a hair on the head of anyone. And ask yourself the question, is that, let's say the government is right that Bundy owes money. I don't believe he is. You pointed out the land. They claim 95% of ownership of the land in Nevada. They constitutionally do not own that amount of land in Nevada.
That's key what you just said. I don't mean to interrupt. Federally, it's 89% on the books, but you're right. They're now grabbing another 6%. They're now taking everything.
Right. But here's the bottom line, is that I've asked Sessions to review this because the prosecution's falling apart. Yet Bundy has been in jail for 1.5 years. He was first put in solitary confinement by this Judge Navarro, handpicked by Harry Reid and Obama. He then was denied a speedy trial. He then was denied right of counsel, me. I'm at the Supreme Court asking the Supreme Court to order me to come into the case. Right now, Bob Barr is looking to possibly come into the case, my good friend that we impeached Clinton together with.
We need to get Bob Barr back on.
Yeah, he's a good man. And Klayman needs help. And he's dying on the vine out there. So I hope people will go to KlaymanBundyDefenseFund.org and contribute.
Because it's a precedent for everybody else. They didn't do anything violent. They should at least be out on bail, especially when their other big case fell apart. Clearly, they're trying to make an example of people, but why would they kill Lincecum when he gets out of the vehicle and is doing nothing? Why did they do that?
Because they think they're above the law. They can do whatever they want and then they'll lie about it.
But why do you shoot a guy with his hands up? I mean, I understand this goes on, but this is actually on video. I mean, this is actually coming out the way the Lincecum said it did.
Right, and where's Black Lives Matter on this one? Okay, this is what they claim has happened to African Americans, you know, but nobody cares if it's a white guy, frankly. And this is the reality here, is that this country is upside down. Okay, we have to fight for it. We believe in equality for everybody. And Klayman Bundy, he doesn't owe money to the government. He has a reasonable basis to believe that he doesn't, the federal government. But does that give the government the right to bust into your house, to attack your sister, to tase your dog viciously, to kill your cattle and bury it in a mass grave, and to tase your sons? Does that give them the right to do that if you owe the government money, which he claims he does not? I mean, what kind of country do we live in? And then you get indicted by Obama, who made a joke. You can find that video on our website at KlaymanBundyDefenseFund.org. He made Obama at the White House Correspondents' Dinner said, this is what happens to you when you use the word Negro. Let me give a piece of advice to that rancher. And sure enough, that rancher was indicted a few years later. This is payback because Obama was offended that Klayman used the word Negro. And of course,
by the way, let's expand on that. The liberal media wants to ban words. So first they start with the word homosexual. Heterosexual, homosexual is just a scientific term. Now I've heard that some people get offended by the name Negro Modelo. Negro just means dark or black in Spanish. It has nothing to do with putting somebody down to use that word. We can play all day Martin Luther King talking about, you know, from the old Negro spiritual, let us sing Amazing Grace. We could play that video right now from YouTube. That was the term that was politically correct then. Then they say, oh, that sounds too much like the N-word, so let's use the word African American. Then folks say they don't like that. I'm just sick of it. I'm just sick of it. But exactly, why would Obama then make a joke about it, saying we'll kill you if you use that word, and then he uses it?
Well, he spent that figuratively. You know, what happened at that White House Correspondents' Dinner is that Rand Paul, who at that point was supporting Klayman Bundy, had invited Klayman to that lunch, to that dinner, apparently. So Obama's trying to be funny on the stage, and he says, I see Senator Paul sitting there. That Nevada rancher isn't with him. And I guess this serves as a lesson for anybody that starts off his sentence, let me tell you about the Negro. And he repeats that twice. And I believe that's why he was indicted, because he offended Obama, and Loretta Lynch was Obama in a skirt. And 2 years later, they wind up indicting him.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll say this about the Bundys. They're nice folks, but they are like from another planet. I mean, they're like from the 50s. They've been out there in the middle of the desert since the 1870s. And they're using the term that he grew up, that Martin Luther King used. And again, it's just...
What he was saying was complimentary African Americans.
Sure, he was saying they've been enslaved. They've been domesticated, but it doesn't matter. No one talks about injecting black people with syphilis. That's okay. Just don't use the word Negro. It's just insane.
Yeah, no, it is. The whole thing's upside down. And here's the bottom line is that we asked Attorney General Jeff Sessions to review this. I've been seeking a meeting with him. Poor guy's under siege. And I hope that the American people will rise up and ask Jeff Sessions to take a look at this neutrally, because this is a persecution. It's a political persecution. It's more than a prosecution.
Exactly. And I agree. Let me ask you this. They've got Trump under siege. They've got Sessions under siege. They've got us under siege, trying to keep us on the defense. Don't we need to go on the offense like you're doing with lawsuits, the rest of it? What else does Trump do? I think he should come out and say, Michael Moore, instead of picking on Brzezinski and, others who are just jokes, hey, Moore, you're calling for violence. You're calling to run into people's offices. If anything bad happens, it's on you. Stop calling for violence. That way we get ahead of them trying to foment a revolution.
Well, Alex, we're taking action there, too. I represent a young gay woman who was attacked at Berkeley when Milo of Breitbart News tried to speak there. And we've sued Berkeley. We've sued the president, Napolitano, the former Obama head of HHS. And we've sued others there. The police department that stood around and watched this woman get beaten up. We've got to start taking action here. We can't just sit here and complain. And what you do is extremely valuable. You're getting to the American people. I do the same thing with, going on your show and having my own radio show. But yes, we need to try to use the legal system, because if we don't, these leftists are fomenting violence. And I'm afraid that you're going to wind up with the militias in the streets. You're going to have the people on the right, people on the left. We're going to be in another civil war, and it's going to be bloody, and it's going to be scary, and it's going to destroy this country. So we're using whatever means we can to try to avoid that. But the reality is we are on the brink of civil war, and very dangerous civil war, because the left knows no bounds. They're Bolsheviks. It's like 1917 in Russia. They don't care if they kill people. They don't care how many people they destroy in terms of the leftist media. And they lie, they cheat, they steal. They're just like communists. That's what they are. Ironically, Putin said recently, looking at these people that are trying to destroy Trump, he says, he has some sense of humor, I might add. He says, these people are a bunch of communists. So, even he sees it. Now, he's a communist, so he knows one when he sees one. So
he was a communist, definitely.
Yeah, well, now he's just a dictator. But the reality is that he sees what's going on here, and he's looking at the United States destroy itself. And frankly, it's not a Russian thing. When was the last time the left complained of Russia? Okay, when was the last time they complained of Moscow? Moscow to the left is like Mecca is to the Muslims.
But not anymore, because it's been retaken, and that's why Hollywood and the left hates it. Look, I'm not going to defend Putin. Russia's a rough place. He's done a lot of Christian reforms, pays folks to have kids. They're not teaching 5-year-olds, how to have sex or whatever. They've done a lot of stuff that's made the left mad. I mean, I think Putin has gone after his opposition. A lot of it's been Western funded, leftist funded, Soros funded. But I mean, Putin really is super popular in Russia. A lot of outside polls show him at like 70%. I mean, do you really think he's a dictator?
Well, he's a dictator, sure he is. But the point here is not to. We don't care whether Putin is or is not. What we know is that there's nothing wrong in talking to Russia. There's nothing wrong in trying to reach another détente. Trump has tried to do that. The Democrats are whipping up hatred. And like I said, when was the last time the Democrats or the left had a problem with the Soviet Union or Russia? They have more kinship to the Soviet Union and Russia than they do to our own country. I mean, Bernie Sanders took his honeymoon there. You could have a movie, honeymoon in Moscow. I mean, this is a guy who worshiped the Soviet Union and
Russia. That's why they're upset, Larry, because it's not the Soviet Union anymore. And I've done my research. Putin's family was secretly Christian the whole time he was in the KGB. I think we're actually seeing a comeback of Russian Christianity. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying they don't meddle in our affairs. But from my research and yours back in the day, the communist Chinese and the EU bureaucrats, and they're the ones that are involved in our elections. They're the ones that are really trying to manipulate things. They're the ones allied with the left.
Well, that's right, Alex. There's no question about it. And in this world, we have to learn how to deal with people. We have to be strong, but you don't shut people out. You don't create a war when you don't have to have a war. And the United States, we're powerful. We need to build up our military. President Trump deserves a chance. He's our last chance. If you think that Obama was bad, if this president fails, the next one's going to be 100 times worse.
I totally agree. Larry Klayman, thank you so much. I'd love to get Bob Barr on. Thanks for reminding me about the former congressman who helped get the impeachment through with you, and just so much more. Thank you so much, my friend.
You're welcome. God bless you. Happy July 4th.
Thank you, sir. Absolutely.